I want to talk to you about emotions again, and especially the emotion of guilt. I have two stories to tell about that, in which relationships led to guilt in an extreme way. When I was still working, I'm retired now, and in the workforce, I was sitting at my desk one day, and I noticed that one of my co-workers was very upset. She was very upset to the stage of crying and trying to hide it from everybody. So I asked her what was wrong, and we walked into a different room away from the crowds of people. I wanted to find out if there was something I could help this lady with. And she told me that she'd been going with this guy, this boyfriend of hers, for about 6 months, but she had finally decided that she didn't think she wanted to continue the relationship. He seemed to be getting more controlling, and she didn't like that part of it, and she had just called him and told him that their relationship was over. And he told her that he'd come back with very strongly with that he needed her, he had to have her, and that he just couldn't live without her, and he'd probably just go out and kill himself if she broke off the relationship with him. And so she was crying about it, and she said, I guess I'll just have to go back with him. And I told her, no, you don't have to go back with him. I said, if you've made a decision that you no longer want to stay in this relationship, then you have that right to break that relationship off. And whatever his actions are, whatever he does, that's his decisions. That's what that's his choices that he makes. I said, I don't think he's going to go out and kill himself. Most people who threaten that in that vein never do. But you never know for sure. And I said, so why don't you just stick by your guns and tell him that it's through and it's over. In fact, I just wouldn't talk to him anymore. So she did, because she really didn't want to be in that relationship. And I talked to her again in a couple of months after that, and he seems to have survived that quite well, because he had another girlfriend now, and he had not committed suicide, and things were going okay with him again. He tried to control her with guilt, and that's what this is about. And that happens to a lot of people. Others try to control them with guilt. But in those situations, why, it's the decisions of the individual that are their own decisions and have nothing to do with you. And the second story I wanted to tell you is a little more involved, much more severe. This was a lady that I didn't have any idea. She wrote me a letter and said that her and her boyfriend had an argument, and he went home that night after the argument and had killed himself, shot himself. She was absolutely destroyed, this lady was, and I can understand why, because she was feeling really guilty about that. So I asked her what the argument was about, and the argument was about things that they were planning to do, places they were planning to go, had nothing to do with that, but nothing to do with anything that came up that he should commit suicide for. But she was so devastated with this, she couldn't go to work. I mean, she was literally sick with guilt. Well, I had a friend of mine come in, and I had him write her too. So between me and this friend of mine, we wrote this lady every single day, and we talked to her every single day. And the two things that we tried to impress upon her was that it wasn't her fault that he committed suicide. And the second thing we tried to impress upon her was that even though he had committed suicide, he was still okay. He was in the spirit world and getting counseling and doing well. And he was probably regretful. I never had any contact with him after he went over, or even before, but I would have, this is from experience that I've had with other cases, is that the first thing after a suicide, the person goes into the spirit world, and he is met there with spiritual beings who help him. They want to counsel with him and try to help him with his whatever problems he may have, and he usually feels quite sorry that he did commit suicide, but he's okay. He's okay. We live after Dad, and he'll have another shot at it. He'll have another round, and who knows, him and her may come together in another lifetime, 100 years from now. I'm not saying that he will, but it's a possibility. But she thought that she had caused him to commit suicide, which he hadn't done. That was his decision. He made that decision. And the conversation, the argument they had nothing to do with that. Suicide never came up in the conversation. It's just that he never thought about her feelings or anyone else's feelings when he killed himself. Now, a lot of people who commit suicide, the first thing they think is, I'm going to kill myself, and boy, is that going to make them feel bad, whatever person they're having a conflict with. Well, it probably will make them feel bad, but they'll get over it, and they'll get over it fairly fast in most cases. But it's a long way to get from a suicide back into the spirit, back into the physical world again. So a lot of people may be trying to control others by saying, you know, I'll commit suicide and all that. But suicide is a decision that people make for themselves. And yes, in many cases they do not consider the the impact that it has on their loved ones, and that impact can be very, very bad. And this girl that we talked about, me and my friend, it took us a month of writing her and answering all of her questions and getting before she ever went back to work. Now she's okay now. She understands now that he's okay and she's okay. But for a while, guilt just totally controlled her life. Now guilt is something that should not control your life. There is something to be said about guilt, though, that is beyond what I really know about. I know that guilt haunts people. I know that people try to make other people feel guilty in order to control them. And I know this wrong. And your best defense against guilt is complete honesty. Complete honesty with yourself and what's going on. And rational analysis about the system. So I hope this may help you. I'm going to say more about emotions and different kinds of emotions as we go along, and I think you're going to find out that every one of our emotions comes from what we feel about ourselves, whether we like ourselves or whether we don't like ourselves. So that's all I have to say now. Thank you.